My sister-in-law tried to humiliate me at my husband's party, but ended up in jail and divorced instead. So, I've been married to Harry for about 7 years now, and most of it's been awesome. But there's this one thing. His sister, Kayla. She just brings a whole lot of negative vibes into our lives. When I first met her, I thought she was great, like I could really get along with her. But boy, was I wrong. Over time, I realized she's just toxic, manipulative, and, honestly, a bit of a downer. I've spent years trying to stay on her good side, knowing how she can be. A little backstory: Harry dated Kayla's best friend when he was 17, but they broke up because Kayla was being all pushy about it. Then when he was 23, she tried setting him up with another friend when he was single, but Harry wasn't into it. She even cried to their parents about wanting him with someone she liked, but they didn't really get involved. Harry and I hit it off while all this was going on, and thankfully, his parents were super supportive of us. Kayla, though? She was always cold to me. She'd randomly bring up Harry's exes when I was around, talking about how great they were doing, hinting he should catch up with them. Harry found it weird, too, and would tell her to knock it off. Things got worse when Harry and I decided to move in together. She tried telling him I wasn't good enough and that he could do better. Ouch, right? By the time we got engaged, everyone was happy for us except Kayla. She made a dramatic exit when we announced it and later cried to Harry, saying she should have been the first to know. It was so bizarre. She even messaged me with this odd advice about taking care of her brother because she was used to being the only woman in his life. I just ignored it. Kayla continued to insert herself into our wedding plans, criticizing everything. One day, she heard me talking about centerpieces with my future mother-in-law and started mocking my choices. That was it for me. I told her she was no longer invited to the wedding. She acted all shocked and eventually called Harry, demanding he control me. But Harry stood by me. In the end, Kayla did attend the wedding, but she showed up in a black floor-length gown with a veil, looking like she was at a funeral instead. It was so awkward. She went around acting like she was losing her brother. Harry confronted her, and she told him I was too controlling. Eventually, my in-laws told her to leave the wedding because she was causing such a scene. It was all so embarrassing for me, but looking back, I'm just glad to have Harry's support. So, here's the deal. I've been trying to keep my distance from her and made it clear she's not allowed near our kid. When I had my son, Nate, she wasn't too happy about it, but luckily my husband's parents were on my side. They totally got why I wanted her nowhere near my newborn. You see, she had a miscarriage with her boyfriend, Jamie, 2 years back, and it really messed her up. It was a rough time for everyone, especially considering our own baby situation. Harry and I felt sorry for her, so we eased up a bit. We let her come over and hang out with Nate. Surprisingly, she was super sweet to him, which shocked me. At first, it seemed like she was a whole new person, but eventually, she slipped back into her old ways. She's always going on about how her life is so tough and nothing ever goes right. She blames everyone else, ex-friends, old bosses, you name it. I've realized she never thinks she's wrong and likes to play the victim. Fast forward to this year, she decided to get married and invited everyone except us. Weird, right? It seemed like things were getting better between us, so Harry was stunned we didn't get an invite. When we asked her why, she said she thought I'd cause drama at her wedding. I've never done anything to her, so I called her up for explanations. Turns out, she wore black to my wedding on purpose and was scared I'd do the same to hers. I told my husband how manipulative she was, and he was furious. After chatting with his parents, Harry let her know we weren't showing up and that we weren't going to help pay for the wedding. She flipped out and started crying, blaming me for everything. Her husband told her off, saying she couldn't point fingers since she admitted her mistake. Kayla tried to brush it off, saying I should just let it go because my wedding was ages ago. Later, she reached out to apologize and wanted forgiveness, but Harry's folks still weren't paying for her wedding. I hate to admit it, but Kayla can be really charming when she wants something. I decided to let bygones be bygones and forgave her. Her wedding with Jamie went smoothly, and we all had a blast. Not even 6 months later, she shows up at our place complaining about her marriage falling apart. We let her crash with us for a few days, during which she constantly ranted about her husband. They were having a rough time trying to have a baby, and Kayla was blaming Jamie for everything. When I tried to talk to her, she insisted it was all his fault. She got super nosy about our lives, making up stuff that wasn't even a thing when she wasn't busy complaining about Jamie. For example, I'd head to the gym before work, and if I was running late, I'd grab my clothes to shower and change there. She watched me do this for a while and started asking odd questions like why I was showering or going to the gym. I didn't think much of it and told her I liked staying fit and didn't want to go to work all sweaty. She'd just nod. One day during lunch, my mother-in-law was telling us about a friend who got divorced and got half her ex's stuff after finding out he cheated. Kayla suddenly asked my husband if we had a prenup. We kind of froze at the question. My husband, being blunt, said no, since we both made good money and didn't feel the need for one. Kayla laughed it off, saying anyone could be cheated on nowadays, which ticked me off. I asked her to explain what she meant, and she implied I was seeing someone else because I always carried a change of clothes. She said, as Harry's sister, it was her duty to warn him. I was floored. Luckily, my in-laws stepped in and told her to mind her own business. But Kayla kept on and even joked about whether Nate was really Harry's son because he didn't look like him. I've never seen my husband so angry. He looked her dead in the eyes and told her she wasn't fit to be a mother and that any child of hers was better off in heaven than with her. The look on her face. So there we were, just sitting there in shock, not even saying a word, while my hubby was going off on Kayla. He was fired up, calling her a shameless troublemaker with nothing better to do and labeling her a loser for not doing anything while her husband worked all day. He kept saying she should focus on her own marriage rather than poking her nose into ours, especially about prenups. Poor Kayla was super upset, crying her eyes out. She turned to Gia, who was sitting right next to her, hoping for some comfort, but he didn't say a thing. It was unusual for my husband to lose his cool like this. Kayla eventually got up and ran to the bathroom, and my husband was still seething. I tried to calm him down by rubbing his hand, and thankfully, Mill showed up at the right moment to help him simmer down. Mill and Fell, who had been quiet observers, understood how annoying Kayla could be and nodded in agreement. When my husband apologized to Jamie but totally blanked Kayla, I felt a sense of relief that he stood up for me so publicly. After lunch, we just cut Kayla off, figuring it would be best for her to reach out when she was ready. Em and Fell had a chat with us later, agreeing Kayla had really crossed the line this time. They couldn't believe how wild she made their usually chill son go. Anyway, fast forward a year, and we hadn't spoken to her since. Everything was running smoothly, and 2 months ago, I found out I was expecting. It was a surprise for sure, but a happy one. We decided to share the news on my husband's birthday, waiting for the perfect moment to spill the beans. So, on the big day, Mill and Phil threw a fantastic party in their yard, inviting all our close family and friends. To our surprise, Kayla showed up after hearing about the event. When we saw her, my husband and I were taken aback. She went up to Harry, gave him a hug, and said she was sorry for how things went last time. My hubby suggested she ought to apologize to me too, and she did, saying she'd been going to therapy and realized how out of line she'd been. Even though I wasn't totally buying it, I nodded along to keep things cool at the party for my husband's sake. Em and Fell checked in, ready to give Kayla the boot if we felt uncomfortable, but Harry didn't want any drama, so we just let it slide. Kayla seemed to be in a good mood, chatting and laughing with everyone, which was kind of strange. She mentioned therapy, so I thought maybe I'd give her the benefit of the doubt. Harry gave a sweet speech about feeling like the luckiest guy in the world, and when it came time to cut the cake, I was blushing like crazy, feeling just as in love as when we first started dating. Then, Harry and I decided to drop the fantastic news about the baby. Grinning, we announced it, and everyone was ecstatic. My mom rushed over, tearing up, and Phil gave us a big congrats with tears in his eyes too. Everyone was buzzing about baby names, clearly thrilled for us. Kayla, though, seemed a bit off, looking a bit irritated and turning away from us. I figured maybe she was just processing everything. I was a tad worried she'd mess up another one of our parties, but I got distracted by people wanting to chat. When it was time for lunch, Rick and my parents insisted I stay put, saying I shouldn't be moving around. Kayla came over, all smiles, offering to get me a plate. She handed me the dish, saying she was really excited about the pregnancy and wanted to make amends for past stuff. I thanked her politely and was about to dig in when I noticed she had put shrimp on my plate, and I'm allergic. I shook my head in disappointment and went to get my own food. Just then, Jamie came over to congratulate me on the pregnancy. After a bit of chatting, he noticed I wasn't eating and reassured me not to worry as he took the plate away. So, the other day at a family party, I pointed out that Sil accidentally gave me a shrimp dish, which was odd since I'm not about that seafood life. Sil loves shrimp, so he said he'd take it off my hands and I could just get a new plate. I just nodded and chuckled, but things took a turn. Just 5 minutes later, Jamie started puking and looked really sick, causing the whole room to stop and stare. Har and Kayla rushed to help him, and Jamie pointed to his plate and throat, making it clear something was seriously wrong. Our jaws dropped as Jamie collapsed, and everyone panicked. Kayla checked his plate and looked shocked. When she asked if I'd given her husband my dish, I nodded, and the room went into full chaos mode. Someone called an ambulance, and Jamie was rushed to the hospital. Kayla was bawling and glaring at me the entire time. It turned out Jamie had been poisoned, which nearly made me faint because that plate was originally mine, and I'm pregnant. The cops got involved to figure out what went wrong, and Jamie's still in the hospital as I'm writing this. Meanwhile, Kayla is by his side, and our family is buzzing with concern and speculation about who might have poisoned him. My in-laws, Mill and Phil, are staying at our place because they're too freaked out to go back home. Honestly, I'm terrified too, especially since everyone might find out I passed my plate to Jamie. If this turns into a full-blown investigation, I'll have to come clean to the police. What scares me most is what Sil might have done. It's freaking me out. I don't want to be near her, and I'm worried about my kids because Sil clearly has no boundaries if she's trying to poison me. I feel terrible for giving Jamie my food and possibly putting everyone in danger. Update 1. Wow, I got a ton of comments on this post really fast, and I didn't expect such a huge response. Earlier, I was typing this with my hands shaking, unable to sleep. I feel somewhat responsible for what went down since I should have just thrown away the dish instead of letting Jamie take it. I keep worrying about what could happen next. My husband's sticking by me, but he doesn't know everything I suspect about his sister. He thinks I'm just stressed. Some folks suggested having a calm talk with everyone, but I don't know if they'll believe me. Luckily, my in-laws have cameras all over their house because the party was in their backyard. They can probably check the footage to see Kayla giving me the plate. I'll update after I talk to them. Update 2. So, we had a talk, and I seriously have the best in-laws ever. Since Mill and Phil are staying with us, I sat down with them and Harry to spill the beans over dinner. I was super nervous, but I laid out everything from the party, how Sil gave me the shrimp plate and how poor Jamie accidentally ate it and got sick. Their reactions were a mix of shock and worry, kind of like mine. Mill and Phil exchanged worried looks while Harry went from being confused to seriously angry. I shared my fears about Sil's intentions and her sketchy behavior in the past. I didn't want to get into details because I'm worried about me and our baby. But Mill is practical and immediately suggested we check the security footage, which Phil agreed to do. It was undeniable, the video caught Sil giving me the poisoned plate, and everything that followed. It was impossible to argue with the evidence, and emotions were running high. Harry was struggling to keep his cool knowing what his sister had done. Mill and Phil were horrified that their daughter would do something so awful. We were all just stunned, trying to figure out what drove her to act like this. Given how serious this is, my in-laws are taking the footage to the police. Jamie's the one who needs to press charges against Sil, so Phil and my husband will talk to him once he's better. Every time I think about handing Jamie that plate, I feel like crying. Wow, where do I even start? It's been a crazy ride. I was so stressed out about how Jamie would handle everything that I couldn't eat or sleep. But hey, I'm back with an update, finally. I know it's been a month since I last filled you in. So, here's the scoop. I'm pregnant, and there's been a lot going on. First off, Kayla got herself into a real mess. After my in-laws showed the police some solid evidence, she was taken into custody. She didn't even try to deny it, she just started bawling her eyes out. Jamie was just as shocked as the rest of us when my husband talked to him about what happened. My husband told Jamie he'll always be part of our family, no matter what. He also suggested Jamie press charges because what Kayla did was so messed up. Once Jamie got his bearings, he decided to charge her and also go for a divorce. Kayla called her parents, begging them to cut her some slack, saying it was for the sake of her unborn daughter. But her dad was firm, telling her she needed to face the consequences and they couldn't keep bailing her out. Her mom was pretty upset about it all but knew Kayla's actions couldn't just be brushed off. Turns out, Kayla had meddled with some food intended for me, and it ended up backfiring, hurting her husband instead. Now, she's facing several charges, including risking lives and messing with food integrity. Kayla's been pleading with Jamie not to go through with the charges, but Jamie's determined to see this through. Her trial is coming up soon, and honestly, it doesn't look like she's getting out of this one. Our son is blissfully unaware of what his aunt did, but my husband Harry and I have decided we have to tell him. It's going to be a tough talk, but it's important. On a happier note, I'm getting regular ultrasounds every couple of weeks. We want the baby's gender to be a surprise, so we're not finding out until the little one arrives. My family's been a bit overprotective knowing what Kayla did, and they're encouraging me to get some help to deal with the anxiety. I've found myself getting anxious about eating food I haven't prepared myself, but with Harry by my side, I'm hopeful I'll get past it. Last check-in was 8 months ago. Kayla got convicted. She came clean in court, saying she'd always been jealous of me. She admitted to mixing rat poison in my food but claimed she never meant to hurt me or the baby. She wanted a lighter sentence because it was her husband who ended up getting poisoned, not me. The judge heard her plea but still sent her to prison for a long time. Jamie's finally free now that the divorce is finalized. We've kept him part of the family and see him often. When I apologized to him for what happened, he assured me it wasn't my fault, and we both had a good cry over it. It's such a relief that he's doing well. Harry and I have a new bundle of joy, a baby girl. Even though the past still casts a shadow, she's brightened our lives. Nate, our son, loves being a big brother, and it's heartwarming to see our kids bond. Our parents have been incredibly supportive, helping us navigate this new chapter in our lives. Thanks for keeping up with our saga. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more jaw-dropping real-life stories.